Mom, do you believe in love at first sight? Alice chirped into her mobile while the commuter train bounced over battered rails. Because I think it just happened to me. Marianne pinned the handset between her shoulder and chin, calmly slicing salmon into translucent petals. When a daughter calls with that tone, it is wiser to listen than to argue. I only believe the look fades, but the loan for the wedding stays, she sighed, though the corners of her mouth rose in spite of themselves. Mom, stop grumbling. We'll be there by 8. He wants to meet you properly. The train roared. The line dropped, and Marianne found herself in mid-kitchen, knife poised, caught by a sudden trembling thought. What if my daughter really is serious? Exactly at 8. Well, a touch after, but Marianne kindly called it exactly. Ian stood in the doorway, tall, immaculate, a costly overcoat the color of midnight asphalt. He carried white lilies that belonged to no autumn and a bottle of red wine Marianne had seen only in glossy magazines while waiting at the hairdresser. Mrs. Wright, good evening. I am very pleased to meet you at last. He said without a hint of awkwardness, like a man used to brokering deals with a single handshake. Marianne suddenly felt like a schoolgirl, though 43 years of life insisted she keep her chin high. Alice, tiny flower dress, loose hair, face glowing, burst between them, rescuing the moment. Mom, this is Ian. Come in. Marianne stepped back, ushering them into a hallway scented with fresh pastry and, faintly, her favorite perfume, applied more generously than usual. At table, everything felt surprisingly calm. The turkey roasted exactly as she had rehearsed at midnight. The wine melted the first shards of awkwardness. Ian told how 7 years earlier he had launched a business on nothing but an idea. Alice laughed, chin in hand, as if hearing a fairy tale. Marianne caught herself staring into his eyes longer than manners allow. In those dark pupils candles flickered, and something else tickled old memories. Once she had sat on a date, laughing just like that, believing everything lay ahead. You look incredibly young, Ian remarked when Alice went for sauce. Calm, almost businesslike, as though noting favorable lighting, yet his gaze slid along her cheek and paused on her lips. Thank you. Working at the clinic keeps me fit. Marianne felt the blood rise. She reached for a joke, but words stuck. He kept looking. 1 second. 2. Too long. Alice returned. The air cracked as if a door had slammed. Marianne half stood for napkins. Anything to cut the invisible thread. Dessert followed, a compliment on the tenderest honey cake on earth. Talk of a proposal Ian planned to make very soon. Alice nestled against his shoulder like a kitten, and Marianne saw his fingers tremble, whether from excitement or something else. After dinner, Alice dashed for her coat, while Marianne helped their guest with his. Her fingers brushed the lapel, then by accident his wrist. Hot skin. She jerked away, but too late. The spark had leapt, and both knew it. Thank you for the evening. Ian bent to kiss her cheek. Pure courtesy. Yet his breath lingered a beat too long. Marianne closed the door and leaned against it. The flat smelled of lilies, and something new, unsettling. A text chimed. I'm so happy, Mum. 3 words from Alice. Marianne wiped her smile, dimmed the lights, and tackled the dishes. Crockery rattled while her mind replayed that look, dark, intent, as though it had seen something in her sheer self had missed. One lily had fallen from the bouquet. She picked it up, inhaled, and caught herself laughing, nervous and soft. 43, divorced, working dawn to dusk, daughter about to marry, yet she suddenly craved new lipstick and stiletto heels. She tucked the flower in a glass, finished the wine, and, for the first time in years, let her thoughts roam. That night, she did not sleep until dawn, because every time she closed her eyes, she saw those 2 extra seconds when her daughter's man looked only at her. An hour later, another message, a heart emoji and a photo of a ring in a jeweler's window. Marianne tapped but something sharp twisted inside. She muted the phone, opened the window, let cold air wash in, and whispered, Do not do anything foolish, Marianne. The night swallowed the plea. Somewhere close, her heart beat an alien, alarming rhythm. Hello. Dear viewers, tell us which city you are watching from, whether you have subscribed to the channel and left a like. It costs you nothing and makes us happy. Enjoy listening. The clatter of dishes. Perfect cover for two people with nothing they can safely say aloud. Alice, glowing with excitement, had run off to the bedroom to dig through a box of souvenirs for a photo of Ian for the family collage, leaving the kitchen in the care of Marianne and her future son-in-law. Can't let the hostess face the kitchen alone, Ian joked easily, rolling up his sleeves as he stepped toward the sink. What's up first? Plates or glasses? Glasses, Marianne replied, trying to sound brisk. Red wine leaves streaks. Better to soak them right away. She turned on the water, but instead of the usual gurgle, all she could hear was the thunder of her heart. Her temples pulsed, same as the day doctors had told her she was officially divorced. Free, but oddly not happy. Ian removed his watch and laid it on the counter. The steel bracelet clicked like a period at the end of an ambiguous sentence. Marianne met his eyes, and there was again that 2-second pause. He smiled with just the corners of his mouth, like someone apologizing for being too curious. Your honey cake is incredible, Ian said, scrubbing berry stains with practiced ease. Restaurants can't match that. The secret's simple, she replied, watching his shoulders move with quiet strength. You warm the honey slowly, and mix the dough only by hand. By hand, he echoed, savoring the phrase. I feel like everything real is made that way. People rush to buy ready-made happiness, but the good stuff, it takes time. God, Marianne, stop it, she thought, barely catching a plate before it slipped from her wet fingers. She wiped her apron with more force than necessary, pretending to be in control. Mrs. Wright. Ian lowered his voice, leaning just a little closer. Thank you for this evening. Alice has told me so much about you, but she left one thing out. You're a wonderful person to talk to. The words were soft, almost confessional. His breath, laced with red wine, brushed her skin, and Marianne felt the warmth of it seep through her blouse like a slow burn. She stepped aside and reached for a fresh towel. I'm just a mother who wants her daughter's life to turn out well. That's exactly what makes you rare, he said with a calm smile, the kind that masked a dangerous certainty. A man who understood the value of every compliment. A voice cut through the tension. Alice calling from the hall. Mom, I found an old frame. Think it'll work for our photo? Coming, Marianne said quickly, pulling off her apron, but Ian caught it from her hands. Their fingers brushed, just a flicker, barely a second, but enough for her insides to scream. Stop. You can't. Alice appeared in the doorway, missing the shift in atmosphere. Wow, you're almost done, she smiled at Ian. I knew you two would get along. Marianne forced a grin. Your Ian's got magic hands. And a magic tongue added a voice inside her, making her flush. Night fell like a heavy shawl. Alice drifted into sleep. Love worked wonders on the nervous system. Marianne wandered the small flat, collecting the remains of dinner. When she opened the dishwasher, she found Ian's glass, forgotten, on the rim, a faint trace of his lips. It was absurd, but she picked up the glass and held her breath, as if it might echo with his voice. What is wrong with me? The question rang through her skull. She remembered looking at herself in the mirror that morning. Soft wrinkles at the eyes, breathless after 5 flights of stairs. She was 43. He was maybe 12 years younger. But it wasn't the age that mattered. It was the fact that this man was going to marry her daughter. Marianne poured herself the last sip of wine, sat on the windowsill. Outside, apartment lights glimmered. Somewhere, someone was laughing, someone yelling, and she was trying to pinpoint the moment her brain had clicked into a new question. What if I'm still interesting to someone? She wrapped her fingers around the lily stem rescued from the bouquet and held the cold flower to her cheek, like a thermometer, trying to measure the fever of foolishness. It'll pass tomorrow, she told herself. Just a vain woman's reflex. But somewhere inside, a small voice whispered, No, tomorrow is just the beginning. And with that came fear and unbearable curiosity. Marianne was exactly 5 minutes late, a rare bit of boldness for a woman who normally arrived early. Morning rain trickled down her umbrella, and her heels slipped slightly on the wet pavement. She carefully pushed open the glass door of the cafe interlude, a cozy co-working spot tucked in the business district, where avocado toast live in harmony with informal negotiations. Ian was already seated at a corner table. His brown wool three-piece suit fit, like it was tailored to his soul. A dark gray scarf hung over the back of the chair. In front of him sat a cooling double espresso and a tablet screen glowing quietly. "Sorry, traffic jam," Marianne said, pulling off her coat and quickly smoothing down her hair. "Don't apologize," he rose, helping her with her scarf. The gesture was slightly too intimate. His fingers brushed her neck and lingered a moment longer than politeness required. Marianne's breath caught. "I ordered you a cappuccino. No sugar, like you like it." How did he remember that? She wondered, but nodded politely. Ian set the tablet aside, but not before she glimpsed a flash on the screen. Lazarus Jewelry House. Engagement rings. "I wanted to talk to you about a surprise for Alice," he began, adopting a businesslike tone. "I'm planning to propose in front of the whole family. You're my best ally here. I need your opinion, from a woman's perspective." Marianne cupped her hands around the warm coffee, as if trying to draw courage from it. The foam left a soft mustache on her lip, and Ian chuckled gently, handing her a napkin. Their fingers touched. A shock wave passed from her wrist straight to her heart. She was the first to pull away. "Rings are your domain," she said, trying to sound composed. "The only thing that matters is whether Alice is truly certain." Young women sometimes confuse infatuation with, she trailed off, unable to find a word that didn't feel like a jab. "With hope for a miracle?" he offered. "Honestly, Mrs. Wright, you're rather skeptical. Maybe it's not about Alice at all." He squinted slightly. Under the warm cafe lighting, his eyes looked almost amber. Marianne shifted her gaze to the marbled swirls in the tabletop. "I just want my daughter not to make a mistake," she said tightly. "A mistake?" Ian leaned in, resting his elbows on the maple wood. "Are you sure calling marriage a mistake isn't more a reflection of your own past?" The question sliced sharper than a scalpel. Heat flared up in her chest, too personal, too soon. But instead of getting angry, she suddenly realized he could see straight through her. "My past," she said, setting down her cup, "ended in divorce. But I hope Alice gets something better." "Hope or expect?" he whispered. Around them, someone ordered another espresso. Spoons clinked, but their world had narrowed to this square table. "You know what surprises me," he continued. "You carry yourself like someone who's decided everything. But I see sorrow behind the posture. You hide your sadness behind perfect form." Marianne hadn't expected this kind of emotional X-ray. For several seconds, she stared out the window, where cabs sprayed the pavement with dirty water. Finally, she asked, "Are you sure you love my daughter?" It sounded calm, almost official, but inside it was a desperate challenge. "Say yes, and I'll walk away." Ian straightened up. His face showed no anger, only deep thought. "Love is a word like forever. I know I care deeply about her," he said carefully, "and I want to be with her as long as it's mutual. Is that not enough?" For the first time, Marian gave a sad smile. "Sometimes it is. Sometimes it isn't." The waitress brought the bill. Ian paid by card, but his gaze never left Marianne. He scribbled something on a napkin and slid it toward her. "If you ever feel like talking about yourself, not about Alice." There was a number, not his full name, just the initial I. She crumpled the napkin into her handbag, stood. Her coat felt heavier now. "Thank you for the coffee." "Ian," his name slipped out softly, almost intimately. He came around the table, brushing her elbow as he helped her into her sleeve, then whispered, "Marianne, you're extraordinary. Forgive me if I was too direct." His eyes lingered, calling her to look deeper. For a moment she was overwhelmed by his cologne. Wood, tobacco, leather. She knew she'd remember it longer than she should. He opened the door. The rain had stopped. Warm steam rose from the sidewalks. "Goodbye," she said. "I hope so," she thought. "See you soon," he replied. And in those two words, she heard a promise she should have run from. But her heels carried her slowly, as if in a dream where hurrying feels absurd. Because the worst had already happened. She, a grown woman, had just realized She didn't want him to propose to her daughter. November had spilled its dim lights across wet storefronts. Alice had stayed at her friend's place to work on a presentation, and Ian had offered to drive Marianne home, saying it was too late for a cab. He parked the car 2 blocks away. An evening walk is healthy, and now they strolled side by side along a boulevard where the chestnut trees had already dropped their last leaves. At first, they chatted about trivial things: stock prices, tramway repairs, new doctors at the clinic. But every reply from Marianne came a beat too late. Her mind played just one question on repeat. Why did I agree to this? Near a small kiosk selling mulled wine, Ian stopped. Let's warm up, it's freezing. Thanks, I'll just take tea. He ordered her a non-alcoholic spice drink and a dry red for himself. Marianne clutched the paper cup in both hands, as if trying to hold on to her pulse. Steam curled into the chilly air and mingled with Ian's breath when he leaned closer to hear her better. You're quiet tonight, he observed. Rough day at work, she lied. You have to be strong for everyone else, but what about for yourself? His voice was gentle, dangerously gentle. Marianne's thoughts flashed to the last year. Night shifts, loan payments, rare holiday calls from her ex. Nothing left for herself. She took a sip. The tea burned her tongue. Tears welled up by themselves. I'm sorry, she said, embarrassed, wiping her eye. This is ridiculous. We're not even friends. Why not? He gently touched her elbow. The thin sleeve of her coat couldn't hide the warmth of his palm. They continued walking. The rain had stopped. The pavement mirrored the storefront lights, as if there were 2 versions of reality. Cafes closed around them. Blue TV light flickered behind windows. Suddenly, in a narrow alley, a street lamp flickered and went out. Marianne instinctively grabbed Ian's arm, startled by the darkness. Her heart pounded so loudly, she feared he might hear it. He stopped, took her gently by the shoulders, and turned her toward him. His face was close enough for her to feel his breath. The warm glow from a window nearby fell across his cheek. She caught a whiff of cinnamon and tobacco. It's okay, he whispered. I'm right here. And in that moment, something gave way, maybe nerves, maybe long-frozen desire. She looked up, and he was looking at her the way you only do once. Not at the past, not at the future. Just now. His fingers brushed her cheek, and Marianne didn't move away. Their lips met, hesitant at first, like testing a temperature, then deeper. 1 minute was enough for the world to shrink into the warmth of a stolen kiss, the taste of red wine and risk. Marianne was the first to break it. She stepped back, covered her mouth like she'd been caught committing a crime. God, I didn't mean for this to happen. Her voice cracked into something high and girlish. Marianne, Ian reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Do you even realize what you're doing? This is betrayal. Tears blurred her makeup. She sucked in air like she hadn't breathed in hours. Listen, he stepped forward. Yes, it was a mistake. I mean that, but... He paused, looking for the right words. But I can't say I regret it. Don't say that. We have to forget this right now, Marianne said, wiping her face with her scarf. You're about to get married, and I'm her mother. He nodded, shoved his hands into his coat pockets, as if afraid they might find her again. All right, we'll forget. I promise. They walked in silence. Every shop window they passed reflected 2 people who looked like fugitives, adults who had lost their way. Outside her building, Marianne stopped. Tell Alice you dropped me off at the front door and left right after. Of course. Ian, she stared into his face, trying to memorize it one last time. Let's pretend this was a dream. He leaned in, about to kiss her cheek, but she stepped up onto the next stair. Don't. It'll make it easier, she whispered. The door clicked shut behind her. Marianne climbed the 5 floors without the elevator, moving like someone in a trance. Inside, she yanked off her coat, pressed her back against the wall, and cried into her palms. Not from shame, even from terror. She didn't feel regret, only the trembling hunger to do it again. Her phone blinked. 10 unread messages from Alice. Mom, I'm so happy. Thanks for supporting us. Marianne turned off the screen. shoved the phone into a drawer, and for the first time in her life, feared her own shadow on the wall, a woman who had crossed a line, and it seemed, didn't want to go back. Alice woke in the middle of the night, unsure what had disturbed her. Her phone lit up on the nightstand, not a call, just a dark screen reflecting the weak streetlight outside. The apartment Ian had bought, and where they now spent most of their time, felt unusually silent. She turned over. The bed was empty. The sheets on his side were already cold. In the kitchen, Ian stood by the window in just a t-shirt, drinking water straight from the bottle. The shadows hid his face, so that only the tense line of his jaw caught the light. "You're awake?" she asked softly, trying to sound tender. "Didn't want to wake you," he replied, setting down the bottle and walking past her, barely brushing her shoulder. In the morning, the distance still lingered. Instead of their usual good morning kiss, Ian tied his tie quickly and kissed her on the temple, like a parent. "You free tonight?" Alice asked, feigning cheer. "Not sure. We'll call you. Might be working late," he replied, already buttoning his coat. The door clicked shut. Alice stood in the hallway, staring at the empty space. That sticky kind of unease started climbing up her spine, like mercury rising in a thermometer. She remembered their first date. A toy boat on the pond, laughter, his arm around her waist. Where had that lightness gone? That same evening, she showed up at her mother's door without warning. Marian opened in her robe, eyes red like she hadn't slept. Alice didn't need small talk. "Mom, are you busy?" "Just some reports." Marianne smoothed her hair. "What's wrong?" "I think Ian's pulling away," Alice said as she walked toward the kitchen. "And I don't know why." Marianne pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet. Her hands trembled. The porcelain clinked. "Men sometimes need space," she offered, pouring tea. "Don't overthink it." "I'm not overthinking," Alice protested. "He looks through me, like I'm not even there. Didn't you notice it during dinner?" Marianne closed the cupboard door a bit harder than needed. "Sweetheart, you've always been sensitive. Stress from uni, the wedding planning. It's normal to feel anxious. It's not nerves." Alice looked at her pointedly, as if begging for a lifeline. "He's avoiding even kissing me. He takes his phone into the shower. He barely asked me how my day was." Marianne turned the kettle back on, though the water was already boiling. The steam hit her face. She closed her eyes, trying to block out the memory of that alleyway kiss. Warm, forbidden. "Pull yourself together," she told herself. "Set your doubts aside," she said in a flat voice. "You're just scared. He's older, successful. You're worried you're not enough." "I'm scared of losing him," Alice whispered. Marianne sat down and took her daughter's hand. Alice's fingers trembled, like a student before an exam. "Alice, love isn't always fireworks," Marianne said, quoting from women's magazines. "Sometimes it's quiet, but not cold." Alice pushed back, steel in her voice. "I live with him, Mum. I feel it when someone shuts down." A pause followed. Marianne knew. Another second, and Alice would start asking the real questions. Her heart pounded. She couldn't let that happen. Everything would collapse. She stood up suddenly. "It's your nerves. Stop looking for problems that don't exist." The words landed like an order. Alice flinched as if slapped. She rose slowly. "All right, maybe I am just overthinking." She forced a smile, but her eyes remained glassy. "I'll go. Got class early." Marianne reached to hug her, but Alice was already pulling on her coat. At the door, she turned. "Mom, I always notice your tone. When you get sharp like that, it means you're hiding something. Are you sure it's just me who's not okay?" Marianne pressed her hand to her chest, where a loud, no echoed, but a loud, she said firmly, "I'm fine, and you two will be fine too." The door closed. Marianne sank into a kitchen chair. The kettle had long gone quiet, but her head rang with one unbearable thought, an impossible choice. Confess or bury the truth forever. On the table sat 2 mugs of tea, growing cold. 2 women, 1 lie, and now they were drowning on opposite shores. Marianne had never kept track of her cycle, not since her 40s, when it had turned unpredictable anyway. But today, standing in line at the pharmacy, a thought struck her. The last time she'd had her period was right before Alice's birthday. That was more than 6 weeks ago. The pharmacist handed over a pregnancy test in a plain cardboard box. Marianne slipped it into the pocket of her coat like it was contraband. At home, she locked herself in the bathroom and turned on the faucet, letting the sound of running water mask her ragged breathing. A small plastic strip, a rustling instruction sheet. Immerse, wait 5 minutes. 5 minutes? Her heartbeat thumped faster than the ticking wall clock. The numbers blurred before her eyes. Minute 1. This is ridiculous. I'm 43. Probably menopause. Minute 2. That alleyway, his lips. Minute 3. Alice in her bridal gown, lace corset, glowing. Minute 4. And if there are 2 lines? What then? By the 5th minute, she couldn't wait any longer. She lunged to the test, lying on the sink's edge. 2 pink lines. Bold. Undeniable. Verdict or miracle. Her knees buckled, and she slid down to the cold tile floor. Her ears rang with one absurd thought. Mother, bride, future stepmother. What had seemed like drama now exploded into catastrophe. Her phone vibrated in her coat pocket. 3rd time in a row. Ian. She couldn't pick up. She splashed water on her face, but the reflection in the mirror looked alien, wide eyes too pale. She buried the test deep in the bathroom bin under a pile of clean tissues, as if that could erase what was now true. That evening, Ian came over without asking. Alice was out with her wedding stylist. So Marianne was alone. Her heart raced as she heard his footsteps echoing up the stairs. He walked in with his usual half-smile, but paused as soon as he saw her. Are you sick? You look. We need to talk, she said, leading him to the kitchen without offering tea. Her hands trembled, and she hugged herself as if trying to stay upright. Ian took off his coat and stepped closer. Marianne, what's wrong? She pulled something small from her jeans pocket, the cap from the test. She held it out like evidence in a courtroom. I'm pregnant. Silence. Time seemed to freeze, then lurch forward violently. The fridge hummed louder. A faucet dripped. Ian shifted from one foot to the other, then braced his hands against the counter like a man trying to stay on his feet. That's... Okay, we have to... He rubbed his temples. Are you sure? 2 lines. I'm absolutely sure. He exhaled like someone hit in the ribs. It's a mistake, he said quietly, but with a firmness that punched the air out of her lungs. We both know how this happened, but this can't happen. Marianne swayed, grabbing the back of a chair for support. That word, mistake, sliced through a delicate hope she didn't even know she'd let form. A mistake? Her voice cracked. A child can't be a mistake. Marianne, be rational. He raised his hands. Try to control the storm. Think about Alice. The wedding. You said yourself, we can't ruin everything. So I ruin alone? Her tone was steel now. And you? You walk away clean. Ian stepped closer but didn't touch her. I'm confused. I didn't think about consequences. It was passion, a weak moment. A moment. She laughed bitterly. It's been weeks. Every glance. Every message. Weakness is when you trip once. We walked into this with our eyes wide open. He closed his eyes, fingers clasped behind his head. I'm not ready. I love Alice. You understand? I love her. The words burned, but Marianne noticed a slight tremble in his voice on that second love, as if he were trying to convince himself more than her. If you love her, she whispered, tell her the truth yourself, or I will. Don't you dare, he snapped, his face hardening. We'll figure something out. An abortion? She spat the word like venom. I'm nearly 44. This could be my last chance to be a mother again. He dropped into a chair, powerless. I don't know what to say. But I do, Marianne said, standing tall now. I'm keeping the baby. Because for me, this isn't a mistake. It's a life. He inhaled, clearly about to argue, but she raised her hand. You need to decide, marry my daughter and live with a lie, or come clean. I'm not pressuring you. I can't lie anymore. He stared at the floor. The overhead light cast a shadow across his face like a split in a mask. I need time, he murmured. You don't have much, she said, opening the door. Go. I'm tired. He passed her, without another word. In the hallway, he paused, perhaps to turn back, but then he walked on. Marianne shut the door and leaned her forehead against the cold wood. Her hands instinctively cradled her stomach. I'm sorry, little one. The world is messier than I expected, but I choose you, even if the whole world doesn't. In the corner, the fridge blinked like a ticking clock. A few hours remained before Alice would return. On the table, the cap from the test sat like a monument to a new life already reshaping the old one. Sunday was supposed to be a cheerful day filled with wedding errands. Choosing the veil, finalizing the reception hall, building the perfect playlist. Alice fluttered around Ian's apartment like a planner in overdrive, bouncing between her laptop and his phone, sending guest lists through messenger apps. Ian stood in the kitchen brewing coffee, trying to smile, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed the storm inside him. Send me that photo of the venue, she called, handing him his phone. Your camera's better and my phone's dead. He hesitated for a second before handing it over. His fingers gripped the device tighter than necessary, a reflex for control that had now become a trap. Refusing would raise suspicion. He handed it over silently. Alice settled back into the sofa, nestled between a fortress of pillows, scrolling through the gallery. The picture of the hall, perfect. She tapped share. Her finger slid further. The next image came up, blurry, unintentional, but what caught her breath wasn't the framing. A woman's hand. A silver bracelet she knew by heart. Behind it, a candid profile of Marianne, laughing at something across a cafe table. The photo was sharp, intimate. Dated December 8th. Alice blinked. Her heart missed a beat. She opened the next image. Marianne again, holding a paper coffee cup with both hands, gaze lowered, lips parted slightly. The angle was personal, almost admiring. The third photo, a park bench, her mother's jacket draped neatly, her scarf on the seat. The caption, evening. Her head whirled. The world around her fell silent, like submerged underwater. She stood up too fast. Her knees gave out. A faint cry slipped from her throat as she collapsed on the floor, the phone tumbling beside her. Ian dropped the coffee mug. It shattered, dark liquid spilling everywhere. What? He rushed over, but her pale face, trembling hands, and the phone lying open told him everything. He picked it up and froze. On the screen was a joy that didn't belong to Alice. Explain. Her voice shook, low and raw like it wasn't hers. Right now. His mouth opened, closed. In that split second, he made a decision. Silence was better than lies. But truth? That would destroy everything. He chose silence. Alice rose to her feet, steadying herself against the couch. Photos of my mother. On your phone. Dated on nights you claimed you had meetings. She walked to the window, needing space to breathe. Are you cheating on me with her? The words hung like a broken elevator cable, snapping reality in half. Ian stepped forward. Ollie, don't. She threw up a hand. Her tears sparked like wires. I want one thing. Yes or no? Ian felt his heart clench like a fist. He stepped back. No words came. No, yes. No, no. Just a man staring at the floor. So, yes, she whispered. God. The front door opened suddenly. Marianne stepped in, holding wedding hall contracts. She froze when she saw her daughter's tear-streaked face. Ian pale as the wall behind him, and coffee all over the floor. What happened? Alice turned slowly, phone in hand. The screen still showed the gallery. Marianne's own image stared back at her. Her hand flew to her mouth, and she gasped like she'd just been slapped. Mom, Alice's voice cracked into a rasp. You explain. I don't want to hear it from him. Marianne stepped forward, reaching for her daughter's trembling arm, but Alice recoiled like from a flame. Silence pulsed in the room until Marianne finally said, I don't know how it started. Her voice was small, fractured. It was a mistake. A mistake? Alice's laugh turned into a sob. He's my fiancé. And you're my mother. How does one accidentally do that? Tears streamed down Mary Ann's cheeks. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just... How long? Alice was taking notes like recording a crime. A few weeks, Mary Ann murmured. Ian tried to step in. Alice, please, Shut up, she screamed, slamming her palm on the table. A cup flew and shattered. You both ruined everything. Mary Ann reached to hug her, but Alice shoved her back so hard she hit the wall. Don't touch me, she trembled with rage. I swear, you'll regret this every single day. She stormed out, slamming the door. The hallway swallowed her cries, leaving only the echo of her heels. Mary Ann collapsed to the floor, clutching her abdomen, where a new heartbeat had barely begun. Tears dripped onto the floor, mixing with spilled coffee. Ian sat beside her, too shocked to speak, too ashamed to defend himself. It's over, Mary Ann whispered. Ian covered his face. The apartment reeked of espresso and disaster. Morning joy turned into bitterness no drink could wash away. Snowflakes tapped gently against the windshield of the bus as it rolled into the quiet residential district where Alice's father lived. The journey had taken exactly 2 hours. Just as long, she thought, as her entire past life had felt before it exploded. She didn't bring a suitcase, just tossed a couple of sweaters and a charger into a backpack. Running is easier when the baggage is light. Her father opened the door immediately, as if he'd been standing right behind it. Tall, shaggy-haired, in a stretched-out sweater with a reindeer print. He smelled of wood shavings and fresh coffee. He'd been building shelves. Hey there, kiddo, he said softly. His eyes held concern, but no panic, exactly what she needed. The moment she stepped through the door, Alice broke. Tears came so suddenly and so violently that she couldn't speak. Vlad just hugged her tightly and didn't ask a single question, not until she calmed down. Only once they sat at the table, warm tea and jam between them, did he ask, So, want to tell me what happened? She told him everything, like reading someone else's confession. The photos, her mother's admission, Ian's silence. She spoke plainly, no theatrical sighs or sobs. Everything inside her had already burned down. Vlad listened quietly. The crease between his brows deepened, but he didn't interrupt. What do you want now? He asked when she finished. Alice shook her head. I think I just want the pain to stop. I don't want to wake up each day feeling like my world's been flipped upside down. He poured more tea. Pain doesn't disappear on command, but you can give it shape. Break it down into steps. Steps? She scoffed. First step, decide whether things are truly over with Ian. After that, you saw what I saw. You didn't see their faces. That was real. I don't need more. Fair enough. Second step, decide how you're going to live with the truth. You can't cut your mother out forever. Like it or not, she's still your blood. His tone was matter-of-fact, and because of that, it grounded her. Alice held the mug tighter. Dad, can I stay here for a couple days? You can stay a month. But I know you hate unresolved stories. Sooner or later, you'll go back to finish the sentence. And he was right. Even as they spoke, her mind was assembling a plan. Return. Say what needed to be said. Then leave again, not for closure, but for space between what was and what's coming next. That night, Vlad gave her a pine-scented blanket and put on an old movie she didn't need to focus on. She fell asleep halfway through, and for the first time in weeks, didn't wake up in panic. 3 days later, the snow had laid a soft white carpet over the streets, and the world seemed quieter. Alice packed her backpack again. Vlad walked her to the front steps. When you talk, he said, don't go looking for guilt. Just speak your truth. I'm hurt. I feel betrayed. People hear that better. She nodded. It was sound advice, easier said than done, but it stuck. Mary Ann's apartment door was locked. The concierge said she was working late at the clinic. Ian, apparently, hadn't been seen in days. Inside, the place looked like it had paused mid-motion. On the dining table sat a white envelope with test results, scribbled in soft feminine script. Urgent, doctor. Alice didn't open it. She walked to her old room and opened the closet. There hung the wedding dress, the lace shimmered mockingly in the afternoon light. She took it down, folded it carefully, and slipped it into a clear garment bag. The door clicked. Marianne stepped in and stopped cold at the sight of her daughter. Her face drained of color even more than it had on the day of the revelation. "Alice, you calm down, Mom. I'm not here to scream." Her voice surprised even herself, calm, distant, almost like an editor correcting someone else's draft. "I'm here to pack and say what I need to say." She held up the dress. "You can resell this. Maybe get back the deposit for the reception hall." Marianne covered her mouth. "I'm so sorry. I haven't slept. Alice, I'm pregnant." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Alice blinked, like she'd just been slapped again, but this time she didn't collapse. "Congratulations," she said coolly. "I wish you and your new family happiness." Her voice cracked slightly, but she swallowed it. Marianne moved forward, but Alice raised a hand. "Not now. I didn't come to tear pages. I came to close a chapter. I just need time." At the door, she turned. "You know what hurts more than betrayal? Silence. If you'd told me from the start, it would have hurt, but it would have been real." She bit her lip, blinking fast. "But thank you. You taught me how to see people clearly, without filters." Marianne wept, but didn't follow. Alice walked out quietly. The cold air bit her cheeks. The tears never had a chance to fall. They froze before they could. She moved toward the bus stop, her backpack slung over one shoulder, the white garment bag in her hand. The past still hung close, but not inside her anymore. Like her father had said, once pain has shape, you can finally begin to leave it behind. The hospital elevator creaked upward slower than life itself. The glowing orange numbers blinked. 2, 3, 4. At 5, the door slid open, releasing the sterile scent of antiseptic and baby cream. Ian stepped out first, as if on instinct. He already knew every step of this corridor by heart. For the past 8 hours, he had paced it endlessly. A white patient band with Marianne's name clung damply to his wrist. He kept turning it in his fingers like a prayer bead, like a charm against what he couldn't control. The delivery room was dimly lit. Marianne lay on her side, hair matted to her neck, lips cracked from breathing through the pain. A plastic cup with a straw sat untouched on the bedside table. Even sipping seemed like too much effort. The damp patches on her pillow told their own story. A nurse popped her head in. "One more push in a minute. You're doing great." Ian sat down on the edge of a stool. He leaned toward Marianne, opened his mouth to say something, anything reassuring, but no words came. His breath came out instead. Thick, heavy, useless. Marianne didn't look at him. In the past few months, eye contact had become too loaded, too dangerous. Every glance reminded them both of the moment where it all began and fell apart. Then the contraction hit like a wave. Marianne gripped the edge of the sheet and cried out. The sound ripped from her like fabric. Ian instinctively reached out his hand. She grabbed it with such force that her nails bit into his skin. For that moment, they were no longer a failed story. Just two humans, pulled into something far bigger than either of them. 5 pushes. One long, breathless encouragement from the midwife. Then a sound tore through the air, a shrill, beautiful, angry cry. A boy, red, alive, tiny fists balled as if ready to fight for his place in the world. Marianne closed her eyes. Tears slid down her temples, not just pain or relief, but proof. Life didn't stop with disaster. Sometimes it started in its wake. Ian stayed where he was, staring at the baby from a distance, like someone looking at a photo of a life they weren't sure they belonged to. The nurse approached him with scissors. "Dad!" He nodded barely, took the scissors, cut the cord. The snip echoed like punctuation, the end of a sentence they hadn't meant to write. By noon, the staff had cleared the room. Now there were 3, Marianne in the bed, the baby bundled up on the scale nearby, and Ian, still holding the wedding ring he had once meant to place on Alice's hand. A small, shining circle of gold. Now just a relic. The door opened softly. Alice walked in. Dark coat, scarf the color of rain. Her hair pulled back low, calm, neat. Nothing about her said drama. But Ian froze all the same. She took one step, saw the baby, saw her mother, and stopped. Her eyes grazed past Ian like he wasn't even there. Marianne sat up slightly. Her lips moved, but no sound came. The emptiness between them roared louder than words. Alice stepped toward the newborn. He squirmed gently, his tiny fingers curled. She touched his palm, very softly, like something sacred. The baby's skin was warm, velvet-like. It stirred something deep in her, a warmth, not pain. Ian clenched the ring tighter in his fist until it bit into his skin. He wanted to say something. Anything. I'm sorry. Thank you. I'll go if you ask. But the air between them had become glass. One wrong word would shatter it, blood and all. Marianne watched her daughter, like a sailor, watching a ship disappear over the horizon. No chance of return, only memory. She longed to say forgive me, but there was no more room for that. Only looks. Alice gently tucked the blanket over the baby's shoulder. Then she stood upright. A single tear slipped down her cheek. Not grief, but acknowledgement. Life marches on, no matter how deep the wound. She turned to her mother. Their eyes locked. Alice's stormy green meeting Marianne's worn-out sky blue. In that look was everything. Lost trust, blood ties, shame, and inevitability. Marianne gave a slight nod. I know what I've lost. Alice didn't nod back, but she didn't look away either. Then she turned, walked to the door. No drama, no exit lines. Just the soft click of her boots across linoleum. The corridor smelled like boiled milk and disinfectant, like a new story being written far away from hers. Ian stepped out after her, but didn't follow. In his palm, the ring had cut a red line into his skin. He watched her disappear toward the elevator and knew there were no words left strong enough to reverse time. Behind him, a tiny cry. He turned. Marianne lifted the baby into her arms, held him to her chest, closed her eyes. Two hearts beat, one fragile, one broken, but still alive. Outside, the first snow of winter fell softly, silent, like the silence of those who have already said everything. 6 months flew by like a commercial break between two foreign films. Moscow had bloomed in lilac, choked in July smog, and was now rustling under September leaves. And Alice was still learning how to live without those old subtitles. Fiancé, wedding, family. Her tiny one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts had started as a hideout, but gradually became home. Ivy now crept across the window frame. A children's coloring page hung near the stove, gift from her students. The job at the private kids' center had come unexpectedly. The director, a friend of one of her professors, had asked, I need a psychologist who listens to children instead of writing reports. Alice had said yes just for a day. She never left. Each morning, she greeted kids whose parents had no time to talk. She read them stories, taught them to name their emotions instead of shouting, and showed them how to paint instead of scream. She came home exhausted, but not empty. For the first time in weeks, something filled the silence. Her phone stayed silent too. Ian had vanished like a fiction. His number was inactive, his social media accounts deleted. Sometimes, Alice caught herself scanning crowds for his profile. Then, angry at herself, she'd forced the thought out like a splinter. She never regretted not chasing him. His absence turned out to be better therapy than anything else. As for her mother, they didn't speak. Technically, they communicated. Dry text messages like, the baby's fine. No fever. Alice would answer, good. She never asked for a picture. She wasn't ready to see a living result of betrayal. But sometimes she dreamt of the boy, crying, reaching out his arms, and woke up with a wet pillow. Late September. The Children's Center organized a field trip to the city's perinatal museum attached to a maternity hospital. It was meant to show kids how life begins. When Alice read the schedule, her chest tightened. Backing out would mean admitting the past still held her. She said yes. That morning was crisp and clear. The kids giggled in the back of the bus, debating if they get to see real babies through glass. Alice smiled, adjusted scarves, but every mile toward the hospital echoed a memory, that hallway, that silence, that newborn cry. The tour guide, a cheerful midwife, led the group through bright, airy halls. Alice stayed at the back, pretending to take photos for a report. Then she froze. There was the same room, the delivery ward where everything had ended and started. She asked for a moment and stepped into the hallway. Beyond the glass, an outdoor terrace stretched out. Young mothers bundled in robes, rocking infants like seabirds nesting at the edge of the world. Alice pressed her forehead to the glass. One nurse wheeled a transparent crib into the sun. Something inside her thudded. Could that be him? A step, then another. The door wasn't locked. In seconds, she stood at the edge of the veranda. The air smelled like wet leaves and antiseptic. Nearby, a woman hummed a lullaby, cradling her baby. Alice watched other people's children. Warmth stirred inside, not pain. A sudden realization hit her. She remembered a baby's hand, but her heart no longer ached to hold it. Her phone vibrated. A photo, a baby Madare, laughing toothlessly, flung upward in strong arms. Marianne's arms. She looked exhausted and happy. Below the photo, Dima, and 2 dates, Alice's birthday and his. 30 years later to the day, Alice didn't notice she was smiling. Not a big, open grin, just a tiny lift at the corner of her mouth, like sunlight finally squeezing through overcast skies. She zoomed in on the picture. Fat cheeks, wrinkled nose. In those features, there was nothing of betrayal, just life, pure and untouched by anyone's mistakes. She stood still for a moment longer, checked herself. Does it still hurt? The pain answered, not like a stab, but a distant echo. Maybe one day, I'll forgive you, she thought. Not for her mother's sake, not for Ian's, for her own. A child from her group waved in the distance. Miss Alice, come take our picture. She wiped a rogue tear, pocketed the phone, and walked toward them. The wooden floorboards creaked. Laughter sparkled in the air. Leaves rustled softly in the breeze. The world kept speaking, and for the first time in a long while, she was ready to listen. Before leaving, she glanced once more at the nursery windows. Tiny figures twitched behind the glass, like letters of an unwritten story. Alice didn't know what the next chapter would be, but she was no longer afraid to turn the page.